Oh my god, I'm a bit late, but you saw the UFC 299 card. I don't have to go through all of them right now, but we're going to go through a few of the fights, and Dana White has cooked up massively. This could be the most stacked UFC card of all time, and I think we've probably got one or two more fights to add onto that card also, maybe. That's if he wants to do it. But first of all, I want to talk about Geoff Neal versus Ian Garry. And the reason I want to bring up that fight specifically is because Ian Garry, in my humble opinion by the way, is going to get humbled against Geoff Neal. Geoff Neal's boxing is very underrated. Yes, he struggled against Wonderboy, who has that like karate stance and stands side on. Ian Machado Garry, he doesn't really fight like that. He fights more in a kickboxing stance. He doesn't fight like side on, bouncing on the toes like that. And I think him being in that type of stance will benefit Geoff Neal compared to like Wonderboy, because you don't really see Ian Machado Garry. Sorry, I didn't mean to call him Machado. That's his girlfriend's boyfriend's name or something. Just Ian Garry, I'll call him. Yeah, doesn't throw that many side kicks to the body. And I think that's going to be very bad against Geoff Neal, because Geoff Neal, we've noticed, he likes to apply a lot of pressure and walk you down. Ian Garry, when he's circling out of the pocket, go back and watch the fight, not now, but Ian Garry against Jordan Williams. He was getting caught with straight punches, which Geoff Neal will throw, but with way more power, all because when he was circling out, he drops his hands a little bit. So he'll take one punch and think that his opponent won't follow up with it, so he drops down the hands and moves around. And if you do that, I know it was his debut, but if you do that against Geoff Neal, he will fire off with multiple combinations. Because look at that fight with Vicente Luque. When he had him in that corner, he was abusing him in that corner. He was just firing off so many punches to the point where Vicente Luque almost had to retire from the sport. He did that much damage to his brain. Think about that. And Geoff Neal is known for having like a lot of power, but with good boxing combinations to go with it. So yeah, he'll look more flat-footed. He'll be very heavy on that front leg, which will make it easier for Ian Garry to like move around and create angles to kick onto that leg. I think Geoff Neal's power is going to be a problem for Ian Garry, because sometimes I think he doesn't hold up his guard tight enough. And I think one punch by Geoff Neal can cause severe damage. We've seen Ian, I almost called him Machado again, hurt before and get like dropped. And I know that was from overthrowing, but he will not have a chance of overthrowing against Geoff Neal unless he hurts him badly, because Geoff Neal will counter in that pocket. He's willing to go toe-to-toe, and I think Ian Garry is going to fight in a very patient Israel Adesanya against Robert Whittaker, the second fight, like a very boring, trying to chop up the legs and circle around, because you do not want to be flat-footed for 1 minute against Geoff Neal, especially when you're throwing kicks, because Geoff Neal is going to be looking to apply pressure to the point where there will be no space for Ian Garry to use his kicks. So that fight I'm very excited for, and it might be a humbling, because we know Ian Garry, full of confidence, which you have to be as a fighter, but he's pulled out of that fight against Vicente Luque, and I've said the reasons why. I can put a card up there about it. And unfortunately, I think this is a much harder fight for him. The guy who he almost retired, he is now fighting that guy who hits harder than Luque, in my opinion. The only thing he doesn't really have is the ground game. But this fight isn't going to go down to the ground. Ian Garry has done judo before, but it's not a fight where Ian Garry, I can see taking it down. He might use the clinch when they get very close in the pocket, if he gets hit badly like he did with Jordan Williams. But that being said, even if he does that, Geoff Neal, being a boxer, well, not actually a boxer, but you know what I mean, a boxing fighting style, he's going to be good in the clinch against Machado. Oh my god, I've called him it again. But yeah, now I want to talk about Michael Venom Page against Kevin Holland. In my humble opinion, Michael Venom Page is extremely overrated, but an extremely exciting fighter to watch, because you never see him go for takedowns or anything. He's bouncing on the toes. You see KSI copy Michael Venom Page in boxing. God knows how that works. It doesn't really. He lost to Tommy Fury. But then again, you could say KSI won that fight. But nonetheless, that side-on style was very dangerous. If you're not like Wonderboy Thompson and your IQ isn't there at times, I don't think that's going to work. And I'm not saying he's got a bad IQ, I just think, look at the opponents he fought in Bellator. A lot of them were can crushers, and when he fought an opponent higher ranked than him, he struggled badly. I watched that fight of Logan Storley live, I remember that in Bellator. Constantly shooting for the leg, and he just couldn't get off him. So I'm thinking, Kevin Holland should be able to take him down. We know he can wrestle. It's all about what will he do. That's why I said untrustable, because against Wonderboy, gets him down, lets him back up. I know he's being nice and they made the agreement, but you're not going to go far by doing that. And doing that against Michael Venom Page, although I believe he could win on the feet, it's a much more riskier game plan compared to taking it down and having more of a chance. Because from what I've seen from Michael Venom Page, I don't really like the takedown defense from him. Maybe that was one fight, but from what I've seen, I have not liked it. And like I've mentioned before, the can crushers. He's got a tendency to bounce on the toes, but then jump into range like a sniper. And you did see in the Douglas Salima fight, not the one where he got knocked out, but the one where he won, you could arguably say he lost that fight. I think he did, in my opinion. And he did not knock him down multiple times. You might watch it and see that he dropped him. That was not a drop. What happened is, if you're throwing a kick, you've got one leg off the ground. If someone jumps into you like a behemoth, well, it's not really a behemoth because he ain't that big, but let's just say a guy jumps into you, of course you're going to fall down to the floor. And he did fall down to the floor, all because you tried to throw a leg kick. And I think Douglas Salima, you could argue, got a legitimate knockdown because they were near the cage, threw a hook, he went down. But Michael Venom Page didn't fall down off his opponent throwing a kick or something. So, in my opinion, that was a legitimate knockdown that he got in the fight. The others from Michael Venom Page were off balance, and it was really a scrappy type of fights where if a punch landed, it looked like it was scuffing, and then someone would slip over, and there was also some ground control with Lima as well. And that is why I think Kevin Holland, remember, UFC and Bellator quality is levels apart. So, I know Michael Page is a good fighter. He fought, what was his name, Mike Perry. And even in that Mike Perry fight, Mike Perry beat him with the boxing. Even if you want to say that Michael Venom Page won, I do think Mike Perry won that. And it's that hands down low. I don't think his striking defense is good enough to do it against fighters of a higher level. That's why he got dropped against Mike Perry early. That is why you saw when he lost against high-ranked opponents in the striking department. For example, what was his name? I've forgotten it already. It feels like I've got CTE. Mike Perry, he gets dropped and they have a competitive fight. And I think against Kevin Holland, he's probably going to strike with him. But I'm just begging he brings it down to the ground and tries to make it more competitive, because one thing you can do very effectively against Michael Page is use the leg kicks. Because when he plunges in the air, takes that back leg off the ground, if you can attack that lead leg as he's jumping in the air, you can make him fall over. And I believe that's what Douglas Salima did. Or it was the inside of the fight. If you can attack the legs as he's jumping in, that can give you the opportunity to jump on top of him when he goes down from a leg kick. So that's what I think that Kevin Holland needs to do. I want to see Michael Page win because he's more entertaining, in my opinion, even though Kevin Holland talks. But I'm just going to be honest with myself. I think Michael Venom Page will lose this fight. And Petr Yan's one of them fights where I'm like, you have to win this fight. If he can't beat Song Yadong, I'm at the point where I'm actually questioning what to do with him. Because you could argue, and I'm going to say something that you might not like here. Petr Yan, you could argue, and listen to the key word. Apart from that Merab fight, the key word, listen. You could argue that he should be undefeated. You look at the Sean O'Malley fight. Most of you, apart from me, think that Petr Yan won that fight. I'm not going into the detail. I made a breakdown on it a long time ago. And who else was it? He beat Corey Sandhagen. He fought Aljamain Sterling twice. So it looked like he was going to win the first fight. Again, I think most people, from what I saw on the MMA Decisions website, picked Yan to win that second fight, as in they thought he won that fight. I think Aljamain won that fight just because of that first round. There was more activity from him, Petr Yan wasted that round by messing about on the feet. That's my opinion. Trying to make reads and not much went on, but I think the body kicks of Aljamain stole that round. So against Song Yadong didn't take any damage against Chris Gutierrez. Unless he suffered like some leg, what's the word? Wear and tear on his knees or something. Because they were being attacked a lot, but he was teeping them a lot in the fight. And with Petr Yan, he'll look to do that because he can land some heavy leg kicks. And I think this fight, I can see it being a very competitive decision where I think Yan will edge it out. Experience. Song Yadong's young, is raw, explosive. But we have seen that when he can come up against a guy who's got good grappling, he can struggle. And that's where I think Petr Yan can manipulate him because his chain grappling is very good. Because say Song Yadong goes to swing really wild in the pocket, I can see Petr Yan shooting for a double leg because Song sometimes he'll throw wide from his hip. That's something I've noticed. But it generates a lot of power and Petr Yan's got a chin and he's very good at timing takedowns. He's got a very high fight IQ. And that is why I think that will be used in the fight. So he might take him down one round. The first round you can expect him to give that away. And Song Yadong pressures forward trying to get a reaction out of Petr Yan. But you look at that Chris Gutierrez fight. It was a very boring first round all because Song Yadong wasn't really throwing that much. I think he was trying to read what Chris Gutierrez was doing because he kept throwing loads of light kicks. They weren't even heavy, and then whilst he was throwing a light kick, a bunch of them, Song Yadong would return with one very heavy one, and them damaging ones were stealing the round. But I think Petr Yan, he could get a KO, but I just think Song Yadong's got a good chin. I just don't see him really getting KO'd. And you could also argue he's got extremely good takedown defense. So look at the control time of Ricky Simón. Yeah, he struggled to get down Song Yadong. But Petr Yan and Ricky Simón's style of grappling is different. Ricky Simón can be more of a volume grappler shooting for loads of takedowns, where Petr Yan can latch on to a takedown attempt but not fully commit to go down and then change it into a back take, then work his way down. He kind of works his way into takedowns down to the ground instead of forcing an initial double or single leg and getting them straight down. You don't have to do that. You can mix it up. And Song Yadong, because of his takedown defense also, that's why I can see this fight as being ranked as a 50-50 when you look at the votes as of right now, and I find that quite surprising. I wouldn't write off Yan because on paper it's not like Ferguson where each of them fights he looks like he has been done, washed up. He doesn't know what to do. He just keeps turning his back, and maybe he might land a strike that drops the opponent but nothing else. That's not Petr Yan. Petr Yan got dominated, I almost said abolished for some reason, against Merab, and apart from that, all the fights have been close. And with Merab, it doesn't matter how good your takedown defense is. His cardio is ridiculous. It's not human. Shooting for these double legs, constantly getting back out 1-2, go back down to the takedown again. He shot, I believe, for a record amount of takedowns, and that was just something that you did not expect for a guy like Petr Yan, who actually did do well at stopping a lot of the takedowns. But there were so many takedown attempts in that fight that he could not win with that pace. He just could not. And then Gilbert Burns versus Della Maddalena. I think this fight has to have a finish in it. I know Kevin Holland against Della Maddalena, they were very respectful of the power, and that's alright. And I think Della Maddalena, again, you might not like my early prediction, I think he's going to KO Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is getting old now. Although his grappling looks like it's improving a lot, it's getting more control time, he doesn't have to just be in its back now. When you have a bad chin, it's hard to fix it. And in my opinion, he's quite chinny. He's got a tendency to be caught with jabs. Remember Kamaru Usman dropping him with a jab. Della Maddalena, as a boxer, his bread and butter is the jab. And because he pops it out so much more than Gilbert Burns, his timing is going to cause a problem for him. The only thing I'd worry about, like I worried about with Sean Brady, is takedowns, because Della Maddalena has that guard so high, and when you have that guard so high, your body is so open, and if you pressure as well against a guy like Gilbert Burns, that's just asking for a takedown and to get maybe submitted, because we've seen with Della Maddalena, if you can get him down to the ground, there is a high chance that you can get him in a submission attempt that's quite deep. But then out of nowhere, like the Derek Lewis meme, there's kind of one for like Della Maddalena where he just somehow stands up and just scrambles his way out of the position, but it looks like he does it effortlessly. But if that happens with Gilbert Burns and he gets a choke, I'm sorry to tell you, he will tap. But when I think about it, I actually thought Sean Brady, of all people, would cause a problem with the grappling. But the reason I'll say that over Burns is I think, another hot take here, Sean Brady is a stronger... Right, listen to the key word, because I know this could get taken out of context. Wrestler, not jiu-jitsu. Pure flat wrestling, control time, all of that. Sean Brady is better than Gilbert Burns at that. Even though after that one fight with Muhammad where he got finished, you might have thought, that's horrific, which on paper it is. But you know why that happened, because you stopped the takedowns. But Della Maddalena, I don't think he'll stop the takedowns, especially after like what I saw with Sean Brady's grappling. Now, I think Gilbert Burns' grappling is good, but I think it's something more that he could deal with, because Gilbert Burns' chin, although the takedowns from Burns looks good, I think it's not the level of Sean Brady where I think he's a very hard guy to defend the takedowns. He looks quite big as well compared to Burns, who isn't going to like massively outweigh a guy like Della Maddalena. And I don't think he rushes into a takedown like a guy like Sean Brady, who he will not mess about on the feet. He'll go straight to work with it. So that is what I think could happen in that fight. And I know I've mentioned it already, but you just know the card is stacked. Like, when have you seen a card where you have a guy who is a potential title challenger, as in was going to be the backup challenger for a title, now fighting on a prelim on this type of card? I don't know if it's guaranteed he's going to be on the prelim as of right now, but on Topology it says he is. And obviously Kevin Holland and Michael Page will not be, I haven't scrolled down to it, right there, at the beginning of the prelims. Obviously not, because why would it be? More people are going to be interested in that than a fight with like Lauren Murphy and Karine Silva. I'm just going to be honest. So yeah, it's not in the correct order right now, but as we get closer to the date, it will be. And like, I forgot about people like Pedro Munoz, he fought recently, already back on the card with Kyler Phillips. Blades and Almeida, like there's so many fights to talk in there. I'll probably make a video talking about some of the others at another time. And Rafael dos Anjos, again, always taking fights. I wouldn't be surprised, and I know it's cringe, but if the UFC did like a BMF belt with him, I don't know, I don't want to talk about a BMF belt, it just sounds cringe, but yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.